Black Ridge Training Facility sat hidden between two barren mountain ranges, a place where the wind carried the sound of shouted orders and the metallic clank of weapons all day long. Recruits whispered that this base didn't build soldiers, it carved them. Every instructor here had a reputation, every drill sergeant a story. That's why the platoon froze the moment they heard a new name on the roster, Sergeant Mara Quinn. No one had ever heard of her. And that alone made her an outsider. The morning she arrived, the sun hadn't fully risen. A dense fog hugged the grounds as the unit assembled, expecting another loud, red-faced drill master. Instead, a quiet woman with controlled footsteps walked toward them, her uniform impeccable, her posture straight but relaxed. She carried no expression on her face, no hint of ego or aggression. Just calm focus. And that calm irritated the men more than any shout could. The recruits exchanged subtle glances. Some smirked. A few looked downright offended. This group had been trained by battle-hardened veterans who crushed their spirits, not someone who didn't even raise her voice. Corporal Hayes, the biggest and loudest among them, leaned toward his friends and muttered loud enough for half the line to hear. "Great, a babysitter." Mara didn't react. She simply scanned the field, noted their fatigue, their posture, the way their eyes darted with judgment. She could read a unit's discipline like some people read books, and what she saw wasn't promising. They were good on paper, strong individually, but not sharp, not unified. "Not yet." Without shouting, she ordered them onto the obstacle course. Her voice was steady, firm, and strangely unsettling. Hayes expected a thunderous bark or a threat, but all he got was simple instruction, as if she knew they would follow without needing to exert dominance. And that silent confidence was what irritated him most. As they began the run, she didn't stand back like most instructors. She walked alongside the course, observing every move with calculating eyes. When someone slipped, she didn't scold. She corrected their footing. When someone slowed down, she didn't insult. She demanded efficiency. Her style wasn't soft, it was precise, almost surgical. But to Hayes and a few others, her lack of fury felt like disrespect. It felt like she wasn't taking them seriously, like she didn't acknowledge how hard the training was. By afternoon, the tension had fermented into something heavier, resentment mixed with bruised pride. And though Mara sensed it, she didn't change her approach. She had been sent here for a reason, when the unit couldn't possibly imagine yet. The storm was coming, and she was the warning they still refused to hear. By the second day, the pressure inside Corporal Hayes was simmering close to the surface. He wasn't used to being outmatched, especially not by someone who never raised her voice. Every correction Mara gave him felt like a personal attack, even though she delivered them calmly and without judgment. It wasn't what she said, it was how effortlessly she said it, as if he were a rookie barely worth noticing. That morning's drill was a close combat session, designed to test reflexes under fatigue. The unit formed a loose circle around the sparring mats. Mara stepped forward and demonstrated a simple defensive maneuver, moving with a fluid grace that didn't seem possible for someone wearing 30 pounds of gear. Hayes watched her carefully, annoyance flaring each time she executed a move with flawless control. When she called him up to spar, laughter rippled through the group. Hayes cracked his knuckles, rolling his shoulders with a smirk, convinced he would finally put her in her place. Mara didn't posture. She simply nodded to begin. The first clash lasted barely 3 seconds. Hayes lunged, overconfident and heavy-handed. Mara pivoted smoothly, used his momentum against him, and sent him crashing to the mat before he even processed what happened. The laughter died instantly. Heat rushed up his neck. Embarrassment hit harder than the fall. "Again," he snapped. Springing up, she obliged. This time he swung harder, more aggressively. She dodged, redirected, swept his legs, and dropped him again, clean, efficient, emotionless. Hayes slammed his fist on the mat as recruits exchanged stunned looks. humiliation twisted into something darker. When he stood up a third time, there was no training left in his eyes, just rage. He stormed toward her, grabbed her vest, and shouted inches from her face, spittle flying. Pride completely shattered. And then, in a reckless burst of anger, he ripped the fabric near her shoulder. He expected weakness. He expected fear. What was revealed instead would freeze the entire field in silence. Every breath around them. The moment the fabric tore, time seemed to slow. A piece of Mara's uniform fluttered to the ground, and the exposed skin of her shoulder caught the morning light. Hayes froze mid-breath, his anger collapsing into a stunned silence. Everyone leaned in, their eyes widening at the sight revealed beneath the shredded cloth. Ink. But not just any ink. Trident. The unmistakable emblem of the U.S. Navy SEALs, carved with stark precision into her skin. The gold wing, the anchor, the pistol, every line sharp, unmistakable, undeniable. But there was more. 2 discrete combat stars surrounding the insignia. Only operators with classified mission achievements received those. Only legends carried that mark. Only ghosts wore it publicly. The air tightened around the platoon. A whisper broke from somewhere in the back, barely audible but sharp enough to split the silence. "Sir, that's a SEAL tattoo." It spread like a ripple. Heads turned. Faces drained of color. SEALs weren't teachers here. They didn't downgrade themselves to basic instruction. They didn't vanish from the battlefield only to appear at a training facility in the mountains. Most of the unit had never even met at SEAL, let alone sparred with one. Hayes stumbled back a step, his hands trembling. The rage that had fueled him moments before evaporated, replaced by fear, raw, icy fear. He had just assaulted someone who belonged to a tier of warriors far above anything he had ever imagined. A woman whose entire presence now shifted from instructor to something far more dangerous. Mara didn't flinch. She didn't cover the tattoo or show embarrassment. She simply pulled her torn vest back into place with calm detachment. Her eyes lifted to meet Hayes's, and in that quiet, unblinking stare, he felt something heavier than anger, judgment, disappointment, and a power he had never recognized until now. Behind him, recruits whispered nervously, "SEALs don't teach here. Is this real? Why would someone like her be assigned to us? God, what did he just do?" Rumors started forming instantly, stories of a female SEAL who disappeared from records after a classified deep water mission. A ghost. A myth. A survivor of operations no one dared speak of. And now she was standing right in front of them, silent, controlled, and more lethal than anyone at Black Ridge. But the question burning through the entire unit was simple. Why was someone like her training them? The moment the SEAL tattoo was revealed, the chain of command reacted faster than anyone expected. Within an hour, the training field was cleared. Hayes was escorted to the briefing room, and Mara was summoned to the commander's office. The recruits watched from a distance, adrenaline still buzzing through their veins, as officers moved with urgency not usually seen on a routine training day. Something had shifted. Something serious. Inside the dimly lit office, Colonel Reeves studied Mara with a complicated expression, part respect, part frustration, and part caution. He shut the door before speaking. "You weren't supposed to reveal that," he said quietly. Mara didn't argue. "I didn't," she replied. He tore it open. Reeves sighed and tapped the edge of her sealed personnel file, a thick folder wrapped in red tape. Most instructors had thin, straightforward records. Hers looked like it could swallow a filing cabinet. "Your presence here was already sensitive. Now this unit will start asking questions. They deserve answers," she said calmly. He shook his head. "Not these answers." His voice softened. "Mara, you know why you're here. You know what's coming." Her eyes held steady. "Yes, sir." Outside, Hayes paced the hallway, trying to steady his breathing. Every step echoed with the weight of what he'd done. He had grabbed a Navy SEAL worse, a classified one. Rumors swirled through the barracks like wildfire, each more unbelievable than the last. Some said she was part of Operation Red Flood, the mission whispered among special forces like a ghost story. Others claimed she was the only survivor of an underwater breach that left an entire SEAL team missing. Details were murky, records sealed, but one thing was certain: whatever she had done wasn't ordinary. When Mara finally stepped out of the commander's office, the hallway fell silent. Her calm face revealed nothing about the conversation, but her eyes held the weight of someone who had carried secrets for far too long. Hayes tried to speak an apology, a plea. Anything, but she walked past him with the same quiet confidence that had defined her since the moment she arrived. Not out of arrogance, not out of anger, but because she was focused on something far bigger than his mistake. The recruits didn't yet know it, but Black Ridge wasn't preparing them for ordinary deployment. Mara Quinn was here because this unit was about to face a threat that required someone with her experience, a threat only a former SEAL would understand. The tattoo didn't just expose her identity, it cracked open a past the military had tried hard to bury. Within minutes of the incident, officers moved through Black Ridge with clipped urgency. Radios crackled, doors slammed, and the usual training day rhythm vanished under a sudden tense silence. Something about Mara's truth carried weight far beyond a simple mistake on the field. Colonel Reeves summoned her to his office, blinds drawn, lights dimmed. He didn't sit when she entered. He stood with her thick classified file in his hands, the red tape still unbroken. His jaw tightened. "You were supposed to stay invisible," he murmured. Mara remained still. "I followed orders. One of your men didn't." Reeves exhaled slowly, frustration layered beneath concern. "If this unit realizes who you are, it changes everything. And you know why you were placed here?" She nodded. "Because something is coming." He didn't confirm it, but his silence was enough. Outside, Hayes waited in the corridor, shoulders tight, stomach hollow. Every rumor spreading through the barracks traced back to him. He'd mocked a woman who had survived missions most soldiers only heard about in whispers. Missions erased from official history. Missions where the debriefing room stayed empty because there were no bodies to return. The other recruits didn't dare approach Mara when she left the office. She walked calmly, but there was a new gravity to her presence, as if the base itself recognized her differently now. Not as an instructor, not as an outsider, but as someone forged in fire far beyond their experience. Hayes opened his mouth again to apologize, but she simply met his eyes for a moment, quiet, steady, unreadable, and kept walking, not because she dismissed him, but because their training, their safety, and their future were now tied to something she could no longer ignore.